that Chai Ling, one of the leaders of the 1989 student protest movement in Beijing, would feature in a meme video now trending on TikTok is one of the magic parts of this platform. In it, the first slide is what I show here about a mother at age 23 addressing 1 million people and leading a movement gathered in Tiananmen Square. And in the second slide, the daughter, 19 years old, shows how she cries over a muffin that her sister took and ate. I can't attest to the veracity of the video, but after the movement, Chai Ling did emigrate to the US, got a kind of good corporate job, and married a somewhat older man, a bit of an oddball figure, a Republican, a Massachusetts Republican, but still, and has 3 daughters. All that said, people are not their parents, and however you feel positive or negative about what I will say, just please leave the girl alone. We've been talking on here recently about student movements, and I thought this would be an interesting entry point to talk about a controversial figure, Chai Ling, pictured here. In an interesting twist, she is much more widely reviled outside China than in it. And that is because on the mainland, there's a kind of simple, cartoonish narrative about the protest movement, but beyond the mainland, there's a lot of interest and discussion and debate and analysis, including by many people who were involved. And so there's a more sophisticated understanding and critique of different individuals and their role in the larger arc. To put it in an American analogy, the movement for Black civil rights, someone not knowledgeable would just kind of lump all the leaders together, whereas a person who knows a little bit could distinguish the world of difference from a James Baldwin to a Jesse Jackson, or even, if we're being really brutal, Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton might be a cruel but decent sort of analogy as someone who is getting his due pay from the corporate world, but the first paragraph of his obit will surely feature the young girl Tawana Brawley and her story. Some things are never forgotten and not forgiven, especially when the person involved seeks no forgiveness. And such is the case with Chai Ling. To many, she has come to symbolize among the protesters certain disreputable currents. One, a kind of self-aggrandizing, self-important nature, which is frankly widespread generally and probably is what it takes to become the leader of a mass movement. More seriously, she is also associated with a kind of rhetorical extremism and a call for bloodshed, the sacrifice of the students and their lives as necessary. That's just sort of the basics. She is also quite litigious and spent over 5 years, along with her husband, suing the creators of probably the best single piece of media about the events of 1989. It's a documentary called Tiananmen, The Gate of Heavenly Peace. I strongly recommend it to you. It allows a lot of people to speak in their own voices directly to you about their motives and experiences. It's shot in Chinese, but has a great English translation, and you should check it out if you can handle something a bit long and serious. The vision of Chai Ling presented there is not very attractive, but it is rather consistent with how a lot of observers and other people in the movement came to feel about her and her role. I myself do not have a positive opinion about her, but I want to speak up in her defense on at least 2 counts. The first is that she was simply very young, and we don't have much of an expectation that people who are, under 25 are going to be in any way competent. And I am broadly sympathetic to student movements of all kinds, and frankly, the onus is on those in authority and running institutions to work to de-escalate and be responsible. The second is about her rhetoric and where it comes from and what influences it. Very clearly, if you have the ears to hear, it is coming out of a cultural revolution vocabulary about sacrifice, blood, purity, and so on, merely updated and adapted to the late 80s. She is, in other words, a product of her revolutionary environment. None of this is meant as a whitewash, just as context, but I think it also helps understand, by the way, why the movement was so brutally repressed, and that is because among those people in power, They tended to perceive the student movement not as having any association whatsoever with the West, which is the kind of garbage idiots online will tell you today, but in fact because they perceived it as a kind of recurrence of cultural revolution forces. And indeed, we know this because we have lots of the transcripts of high-level meetings, which you can read, and there are even some available in English. Now, I don't want to leave you with just a negative view of this movement as somehow seen through the prism of Chiling, because movements are bigger than their leaders, and indeed this one was diverse, and there were many figures, even among the students, who were just one group. So, for example, there was Kaishi, a ethnic Uyghur man very centrally involved, or Wang Dan, a history student who I actually knew personally, though later in life when he was doing his doctorate. Chinese history and politics, in other words, are not a cartoon or a fable just for your enjoyment. They are complicated and serious, and you should understand them the way that you might those of your own society. My father once made an offhand remark that has stuck with me to this day, and he said that one cannot judge the value of a cause by who your allies are in it. This for him was hard-won wisdom, and I think about it often.